Hello everyone, so this will be a short introduction to the Captive Wildlife Management course. By the end of this video, you are expected to know the course content and understand the history of zoo and its role in conservation of wildlife. So one of the main questions, what is a zoo? Malaysia's wildlife law and conventions and factors to consider when designing a zoo. So what is a zoo? Basically, it is a collection of wild animals in a captive setting, or aquarium for marine organisms. There are two decisive measures for zoo exhibits. First is the degree which they meet animals' biological requirements, either psychological, physiological, behavioral, social, emotional needs and wants, and secondly, the degree which they inspire and enthuse human visitors to develop a more caring and compassionate view of wild animals. Role of zoo and aquarium. Zoo and aquariums are conservation areas. First of all, it provides natural habitat for native species and builds time bridges for species that are threatened in the wild. So by right, zoo animals are not supposed to perceive themselves as prisoners, but as owners of their enclosures, which territorial species will defend against intruders. Apart from that, zoo and aquariums are recreational areas. It provides a well-designed environment where urban people can take a time out. Meeting animals in enjoyable surroundings is at the source of people caring for animals in nature and thus becoming conservationists. And thirdly, zoo and aquariums are places of education and research. It provides formal and informal education opportunities, cooperating with research institutions and developing increasingly into integral conservation centers, linking their ex situ activities to in situ conservation projects. So it is an essential element of zoo conservation strategy. The goal is to make visitors better stewards of their environment. So let's have a short walk on how the exhibiting animals changes through time. Back then, it used to be zoo is firstly used as menagerie back in the as early as 1872. So like this one, this is Giraffe House, and this is the present version of this place. So it is still there. This one is founded by Carl Hagenbeck Sr. in 1863. Open enclosures surrounded by moats rather than barred cages. So this is one of the first panorama exhibits in 1896. It is there 1907 and it is still here in Deer Park, Hagenbeck Zoo in the present time. Landscape Zoo Nuremberg. A landscape zoo within Europe, it is shaped by a former sandstone squat quarries and mixed forests of the ancient Nuremberg Reichswald. How can you pronounce that? Anyway, founded in 1912, right? And it is still here. It is still there. To this day. So basically, that is how zoo changes throughout time. So now let's talk about exhibitory. So zoo is seen as primary leisure destination. It is an exhibit which displays the diversity of life primarily. That is what it is. Primarily arranged taxonomically. It used to be arranged taxonomically, such as bird house, reptile house, monkey house, and etc. This is the West Midlands Safari Park. Example of a reptile house, and this is Brookfield Zoo in Chicago. That's a primate enclosure. So when we talk about zoo enclosure designs, we need to talk about Hagenbeck's panoramic designs. So in 1907, there was a revolutionary animal park in Hamburg. It changed the way live animals displayed and observed. Animals were staged in natural settings and open enclosures. So cage, it is what they call a cageless display. You can't see the cage. It creates panoramic vistas by using controlled sightlines, carefully obscured moats, and extensive rockwork as artificially constructed landscape along with water areas. So they use moats instead of bars to separate its animals from zoo visitors. So Karl Hagenbeck was a German animal trader and trainer. So he comes up with this idea. Alright, so this is one of the examples. Instead of bars, they can actually use moats, water, to separate the animals from the visitors. And then comes Heine Hediger's zoo biology, a zoo where the animals come first. Right? So it is a zoo designed from a biological perspective, one of the pioneers who works on this. It is a fundamental, it is based on the fundamental behavioral characteristics of animal. And he is the first to detail importance of tailoring an enclosure to suit the natural habits of the resident animals, such as the needs for flight distance and psychological of the species. He also promotes natural diet, which emphasizes the varied feeding times and using natural materials. Apart from that, he uses appropriate social groupings and area to escape from each other and the public. So this is what they call now as environmental enrichment. A zoo where the animals comes first. So next, let's have a look at Malaysia wildlife law and conventions. This is from Peninsular Malaysia. You see, in Semenanjung, Malaysia, you can see these 9 wildlife law and conventions. And then in Sarawak, you can see these 8. While in Sabah, you have quite a lot. There's 16 which are related to wildlife law and conventions. But then again, there's none which talks about zoo and exhibits. So in 2012, the Kementerian Sumber Asli dan Alam Sekitar actually produced a Garis Panduan Standard Zoo Malaysia in pengendalian of zoo. So in this Garis Panduan Standard Zoo Malaysia, they actually touch about wildlife welfare standard, zoo infrastructure, zoo management, wildlife exhibit management, safety, education and research, and wildlife conservation. So what are the factors to consider when designing a zoo? There are 5 major factors. First is zoo management itself. How do you then manage the zoo? Secondly, health and safety, of course. 3 is the animal department, which concerns the animal. 4th is visiting customer services, and 5th, the conservation, education, and research. Alright, so what we're going to focus on today is topic 3, enclosure design and exhibit. So by the end of the lecture, you would be able to identify the balance requirement between the need of animal, visitor, and the staff in designing an exhibit. Secondly, you would be able to explain the different types of exhibit. And thirdly, describe the basic structure and design principles of an exhibit. So in enclosure design and exhibit, there are 3 major parts of it. The first one is animal welfare. Second one is the enclosure design, and third one is environmental enrichment. So for today, we're going to have a look at number 1, which is animal welfare. The key principles of animal welfare, there are 5 of it. First is access to food and water. Secondly, a suitable environment to live in. Thirdly, provision of health care if animals are sick or injured. Fourthly, every animal should be able to express its most natural behavior. And 5th, protection from fear and distress. So these are what they call as 5 freedoms in animal welfare. Alright? So I repeat it again. The first freedom is freedom from thirst, hunger, and malnutrition. So you need to provide ready access to fresh water and a diet to maintain full health and vigor of the animals. So this has been mentioned as such in the Garis Panduan Standard Zoo Malaysia. Alright, you can have a read that later. Here as well. And secondly, freedom from discomfort. The animals need to be provided a suitable environment, including shelter and a comfortable resting area. Bebas daripada ketidakselesaan. For example, allocated space for reproduction in newborns, space for adaptation period for newly brought in animals, light, heat, and moist temperature for environment at optimum, enough space for group or solitary animal. Naturalistic furniture which may imitate what the animal may have in its natural habitat, and escape or cover area for a me time. So animal needs me time as well. So the third freedom is freedom from pain, injury, and disease by prevention or rapid diagnosis and treatment. So it states that the animal should have enough roaming space to avoid domination of individual which may cause harm to others, and maintenance of enclosure to identify any damage which may inflict injury or disease, chemical or paint used in water source. Sanitary of enclosure with detergent, water and cleaning equipment must always be available. Maintenance and risk posed by fallen branches of trees. Minimum distance or barrier between animal and human must be able to prevent disease transfer. Activities which may cause injury to animal is a big no. They need routine health check and scheduled vaccination and deworm. Then there's health screening to make sure animal is free from parasite, viruses or other pathogen. Analysis of dung and water samples to ensure the health of the animal. Daily health and observation charge is a must. And the animal requires vet services, and a zoo with big mammals required to have an in-house vet. Vaccination and serum check is required to prevent introduced disease from newly brought animal individual. The fourth freedom is freedom to express most normal behavior by providing sufficient space, proper facilities, and company of the animal's own kind if it's a group or social animal. So enclosure must complement the physiological and psychological needs of the animal. Behavioral enrichment necessities needs to be provided. And the last freedom is the freedom from fear and distress by ensuring conditions which avoid mental suffering. Allocation of animals enclosure in reference to the food chain hierarchy. You shouldn't put the pemangsa near to its mangsa. It will be stressed all the time. Optimum number of individuals to ensure their comfort. Buffer zone between enclosure and environment to avoid disturbance, and direct contact is not encouraged because the animal may feel stressed. Separate enclosure is required for pregnant animals and newborn for certain species. Injured or stressed animals are not to be exhibited. Provocation by visitors onto animals are prohibited. So those are the 5 freedoms in animal welfare that will be based on when you design an enclosure for an animal. So basically, what are zoos for? It is for balancing the animal welfare and biodiversity conservation obligations of zoos. So have a look at that. So for summary, zoo and aquarium are places where conservation takes place, a recreational area, and most importantly, a place for education and research. In animal welfare encompasses of the 5 freedoms: freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury, and disease, freedom to express normal behavior, and freedom from fear and distress. So these are the references used. Thank you.